And that term is FOMO. And the beauty about FOMO is that it's extremely neutral in terms of the person getting it. You could have the founder having a FOMO. You could have the investor having a FOMO. You could have an individual having a FOMO. You could have an institution having a FOMO. This entire element of FOMO has been taken into another level altogether, where a lot of times it's also said that deal making, closure of a deal, to a great extent is relying on how FOMO is managed. So deal making is about FOMO management. To a great extent, I believe that, because if you manage it well, it's a win-win for both parties.
Yeah.
And I also believe a deal is a deal for everyone. If you have a one-sided deal, then there are other problems that come into surface. But let's go into a little bit of granular detailing about what your interpretation of FOMO is, and your advice to our viewers, where a lot of them could either be young founders or young investors. How do they manage internal FOMO?
See, I personally am against FOMO. It does come at times, but
What do you mean you're against?
against meaning, as even within our team, I think that is something we always keep telling ourselves, that our decisions, our wish to invest in a certain sector or going behind a certain founder or a certain company will never be driven by FOMO. And like you said, we see a lot of that happening. There is a herd mentality. There is this fear of missing out all the time, especially these days, right? And we make a conscious effort to stay away from it. This is on the professional front, and I think that is something we tell our founders as well.
So when you say you make a constant effort to stay away
Conscious
from it,
effort.
and a conscious effort to stay away from it, what happens when, as a result of that, something could result in an anti-portfolio, and you could have a huge regret that had you pursued it at that point of time, you perhaps would have had the term sheet over 4 other guys who were in the rat race.
So we are very clear in this, and it has happened. We have not invested in several sectors or companies, or missed out on certain investment opportunities because we have not followed this mentality. I don't think there are any regrets at all. There are some learnings. There are some thoughts on maybe we could have done something differently, but I don't think, and this is something Ash he constantly keeps telling us, that FOMO is bad. Plus this, just because everyone is doing it, there is no need to, feel that pressure and go. There have been years when we have not made a single investment. Our fund size, that's the reason we keep it at a manageable size, because
You don't have
we
pressure
do
to
not
deploy.
want to have that pressure. So, like I said, there is a conscious effort, and even amongst our younger team members, where there's more peer pressure, right? Other funds, talking about this investment, that investment. So, we are constantly reiterating that FOMO is not good. That should not be the reason we are doing something or not doing something.
So that's from an investor hat.
Yeah.
Now drive this into personal, and therefore if you have to advise some founders, what do they take away from FOMO? Because founders also have a lot of FOMO.
Absolutely.
And a lot of times FOMO makes them take perhaps a wrong call,
Yeah.
which in the long term hurts much more. I'll give a case in point example.
Yeah.
Because of maybe certain third-party constructs about a partner, a founder may choose and say that this is something that will help me greatly, because I am relying a lot on the intangible along with the tangible. But maybe enough due diligence was not done on the intangible capital. And as a result, when that person came on the cap table and the valuation was perhaps 10 basis points lower than someone who did not showcase that intangible element, in the long run, the founder loses out on the valuation and also does not see that intangible capital coming in. I am a firm believer and a firm advocate to say that intangible capital matters far more than tangible. But a lot of times that also is negative because it creates that FOMO where founders believe that there is something which they can get access to, but it actually is not existing. So how do you advise, and what would you advise founders to have in terms of a mindset to deal with this?
So this is something we face all the time. One is, of course, valuation, what you mentioned. A lot of times that's the attraction. Instead of looking at the intangibles, which, like you said, are usually far more important, they go for the number or the fact that it's a bigger investor and therefore, lot more valuable maybe. But one thing again we keep telling our founders is, we as investors do so much diligence on you guys and your company. It is even more important for you guys to go out there and do the reference checks and diligence on us. Are we the right fit for your company? Are we the right fit for you? And especially like for us, because we go in so early stage, a lot of times it's just the chemistry between us and our founder. So that connection is very important. And once we are in for the next round, any new investor coming in, the automatic tendency is to go for the higher valuation or the larger fund or investor, larger name, exactly. So the one thing we keep repeating, sometimes the founders listen to us, sometimes they don't, and there have been again consequences because of that, because it does not turn out to be what they had expected that big name to be or that big valuation to be. But what we keep saying is valuation number, yes, of course, you shouldn't take something which you think is totally unreasonably low. But at the same time, if you feel there's a connection with the investor, you feel there's a lot more intangible value that they are bringing to the table, that's the investor you need to go with. Not because someone said your friend who's also a founder has got a large name on their cap table and therefore you also want. That should not be the
And that FOMO is one of the worst
factor.
things to do.
Absolutely.